Arreis, welcome to the Reiber Sessions. Where are we today?
Today we are at Alley Taps, one of my favorite spots in the whole city of Nashville.
Yeah, this is gonna be pretty cool.
It really is. I'm so excited. I played here basically weekly for like a year,
That's
from
really
like 21 to 2022. So.
I know, and we've been trying to get this going for a couple months now,
I
and so we finally made it happen. So I feel like here we'll do a quick cheers. We're here for a reason. You have a really cool story, by the way.
Thank you.
You did a podcast a little while back called The Rhetoric Rabbit Hole, and they told your story so well, from your childhood up to Vices, and then talking about all the songs. So I'm curious to kind of start maybe in a similar place that they did a little bit with your childhood, your upbringing. You have a religious upbringing from a really young age. Maybe talk a little bit about that and maybe how that started to shape your music a bit.
Totally. So religion is like such a double-edged sword in so many ways, because it's like obviously a huge facet of so many people's lives, and then I can't, it's a huge facet of mine, so without it I wouldn't be who I was today,
Right, oh for sure.
And it's one of those great and terrible things. So I went to this really, really small Baptist academy in Illinois, like the suburbs of Chicago, for the first like 12 years of my life, and that was really interesting because I learned how to play piano and I learned how to play violin, and I like got a bunch of like choral experience and like music experience there. So I can't say that it was totally bad for me. Like they took me out of classes to play piano, like, or to do piano lessons. Like that obviously was hugely influential in my music life. But at the same time, like this was one of the most, like, if you imagine, I don't know if y'all are familiar with like the Duggar family, like the 19 kids and counting, and like
some of us are, some of it,
exactly, like the people that like wear skirts below their knees and like aren't allowed to cut their hair, or like women aren't allowed to have jobs. Like it's like that level of crazy though too. Like that's the school that I grew up in. So.
I heard that there was like a contract that they had to make. What was that about?
Yes. So when I actually left that school, because in the 7th grade, from 6th grade to 7th grade, they were making like 12-year-olds sign a contract basically saying that you can't go to the movies, you can't, if you're a woman, you can't wear a skirt below your knees, you can't like listen to certain types of music because like Jesus is watching, and like if you're in breach of this contract, like obviously like someone's gonna find out and it's gonna hurt your testimony. And I was just
that's crazy. For like a 6th grader? That's,
it's utterly
what are we
insane.
doing?
So my dad, and at the time, who was still like a fairly conservative Christian guy, he wasn't that crazy though. He was like, nah, you can leave, you can go to public school, like it's fine, I still
his
like
favorite band
music.
What's his favorite
Steely
band?
Dan.
Steely Dan. Right.
Steely Dan, right, yeah, exactly.
That might go against the contract.
Right, exactly. Like even that would just not be okay. And he was like, yeah, it's silly, like you're not gonna wear like a skirt for your whole life, like it's not even about being modest, it's just about like grooming women. And it was a very like, that was very traumatic. And so now like obviously then religion has impacted me then to go against it as well. Like obviously it brought me up playing music, but it also then gave me the tools to write music about what I disagree with and how it hurt me, and hopefully like relate to other people that might have been through something similar that I went through,
I feel that in kind of a big way. I went through public school up until 7th grade, then 8th grade I started in Jesuit high school, which is like very, very Catholic.
Okay, I love asking other people because I feel like everybody has a touch point of like some sort of religious trauma in their life, Like, this is such a big thing in society that we all grew up with this, in this like, especially the country that was founded on like Christian values, you know? You can't really escape it. So I always like to ask, like, so you went to a Jesuit college.
Jesuit high school. And then also a Jesuit college, so you're not wrong, in New Orleans. But I felt, and I don't know if you feel the same way, just listening to some of your other stories, like the podcast that I was talking about, did it seem forced on you? Because when I was in high school, I would go to religious classes that I had to take no matter what, and when I was a young child, my mom was like, we are going to church, and things like that. It felt forced when I was a child, and that made me want to quote unquote rebel against it, I think.
Totally.
That was where my mindset was.
Oh yeah, I mean it's kind of the classic like strict parents or like strict values create sneaky children.
Yeah, a little
like
bit.
I think that's always sort of a facet of the truth, but I think it was forced on me, but I think that it was introduced to me at such a young age. I was 4 or 5 when they were telling me you're gonna go to hell if you don't accept Jesus Christ as your savior, And I was too little that like it scared me. It like deeply terrified me to the point of like writing this album and like crying out and being like, well, what if I don't believe this? Am I going to die someday and go to hell? Like, and just being so kept up at night by these things, and like to the point where it just consumed my whole psyche and my whole being. So I think that it didn't seem as forced to me, maybe because I think there's an element of brainwashing from such a young age that like I was going, and even though I didn't believe all of the stuff that they preached about at church, I still went because I was so afraid that something bad was going to happen to me, until eventually bad things happened to me at church and I realized, wow, bad things can happen no matter what. That's just life, you know? Like it's, you know.
When you say bad things at church, what are you talking about?
So I eventually went to a Christian college that was even, I think, just as strict or along the same lines, not quite as, I was in California, so
small college?
Small college. It was called Biola. It standed for Bible Institute of Los Angeles. And for a while I never like talked about them directly, but now I love to talk about them directly because
let's go, open it up.
I'm like, come
open it up. Let's go.
Biola, fuck you guys. Like it's just how it goes, you know?
Open it up.
So I went there and like they were just very like without going into the story as deeply as like I definitely could and would like to one day. There was just a lot of open ridicule because of like dyeing my hair, getting my face pierced, like presenting the way that I present. Like I'm bi, so that was another thing that I was sort of discovering at the time. Like also I had like a lot of friends in the LGBT community that was like it was a huge facet of my personality, and like and they were all like, well, that's a sin, and like they had people like come into actual lectures and preach about like the benefits of conversion therapy and just crazy things that like you wouldn't even imagine are happening.
Weird stuff.
Really weird. Like, well, if you're an actual Christian, like, oh my goodness, they'll like, if you're an actual Christian, I guess, like, you would just turn to God and no longer have these like, you know, gay feelings, which is so silly.
It doesn't work
it doesn't work like that.
Right.
And so then I always felt guilty for then I had such close friends in the gay community, and then like obviously discovering myself, realizing that I'm not like 100% straight was then like, okay, well then I'm for sure going to hell. And eventually kind of just like went my separate ways with the church, but then and kind of dealt with the repercussions of the teachings and the ridicule that I received on the back end. And now then when I personified Arreis and was like, okay, we're going to write music, we're going to perform, like what do I want to do with that? What do I want to say with that? How do I want my live shows? What do I want to dedicate all of this to? And it's really to just healing the religious trauma and healing yourself and being a better version of yourself, especially for women, because like I don't think women get the same shot and the same like rights and the same like thing that men do, and our system is built upon this, you know, Christian foundation that I think I've seen as oppress women from the get-go, you know, and that's at least what I've felt. So like now when I get up there and on stage and I'm like, like dress how you want. Free the nip. Go for it. Be you. Like, be sparkly. Be bold. Say whatever you want. Be whoever you want. Like, I've also, like, there are people that don't like it, and there are people that love it. And but I feel like I'm doing the right thing and what I was meant to do. You know, God or no God, or if the universe is telling me, or there is a high power, or if it's all from within. Either way, like I feel like I'm doing what I was meant to do or what I was called to do.
I feel like kind of on that same note, you know, being meant to do, being called to do something, right? Like when you realized, when you were kind of discovering that you were bi, how did that feel when, you know, with this such an intense religious upbringing and probably being told for a lot of your life that wasn't okay? How did you deal with that?
Well, I think like again in the church, because of how strict that it was when I was growing up, there was truly just so much that I wasn't exposed to or didn't even know until like I was like later in age. So until I went to public school when I was like 13, 14, did I even like understand the terms. Like I was definitely had like feelings for like one of my best like girlfriends, and that was definitely how it started, but I didn't really get to that level of exposure to it until I was in public school, because I didn't even have the terms to like say it.
You were never
taught. Shelter you. Like,
it was never introduced.
I had no idea. So like it kind of came for me later, where I was sort of like, well, like I find women attractive too. Like this is just something, and it never. Once I decided that to like pursue, I guess, women or just to like not, I guess, have it as like part of my options, I guess. It was not, I was out of the church by then, you know, so it was a later thing for me where I was like, of course, like, obviously I find women attractive, women are beautiful, like, but I mean, it definitely wasn't like a moment where it was like, oh, this is what I like remember, this is how I felt oppressed at the time. I think for me the worst part of growing up in the church was truly just the ridicule of how I looked, how I presented. I was always breaking the rules. I was always like getting the like ruler on, how many like inches above the knee it was on your skirt and like stuff.
Just the insane stuff. I wanted to ask you, when did the rebel in you come out? How old were you when you started to, you know what I mean?
Honestly, I don't really think the rebel in me came out until I started like bartending. I think when I started working in restaurants, and so I dropped out of school right before, like right as COVID was sort of happening. Like I was in classes and I already didn't want to be in school anymore. Because like I went to this Christian college and it was so traumatic and I was like, I don't want to do this. Like this is so terrible. I gotta move. And that was in California. So like I moved back to Chicago and I was going to school part-time, but I hated it. And I really just wanted to like save all my money and move, and that's what I ended up doing. I saved all my money and moved here. But I think the rebel in me was then started coming out when I turned 21 and then was able to bartend and was able to like start partying and going out with people and like all that stuff.
Yeah, like doing your own thing on your own terms. Doing my own thing,
right, exactly. And like just getting caught up with the wrong guys, the wrong crowd, the wrong people.
Which is all part of it. Like, you know, we all had to go through that.
Oh my gosh.
I have enough stories.
But it's so funny because like for so long I felt like I was doing something like so wrong. Because I was like, oh, I'm just being so bad. And now like I see.
But even when you say you're being so bad, it's so graceful. Like I can't flick my hair like that, but it's like, you know what I mean?
So
like
bad, But no, it's so funny because you're saying like, oh, well, we all had those stories.
Right. Bad and you don't regret it.
No, it was so normal. It's so normal for people to go through phases, go through the hoe phase, go through the like the villain era phase or whatever the kids are calling it these days.
I don't even know.
Like, but like stuff like that, it's so easy to then like think back and be like, wow, you were just like everybody else, you know, and that you were so normal, like, and that is such a nice feeling to have because for so long I felt so demonized and so like oppressed and put down by by the powers that be, you know, that I just was like, I think everything I'm doing is wrong. But then I wrote Vices, and I think like that was sort of the segue into changing my life and changing my perspective. Was that when I wrote this album, it was very like, okay, let's lean into the vices. Like let's let yourself do some things.
It's more of a literal. It's like, here are my actual 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
Right, exactly. 1 through 9. Here's what I got going on, and here's what I'm struggling with. But I want to be real about it. That was because that was my biggest problem with the church, is that they don't do a good job of being able to pinpoint struggle. Like they don't, and being vocal about what you're going through, you know?
Yeah, for
like,
sure.
It's always hide it. You're not depressed because you have Jesus, and you're not this because you have that, and like you have a community, so rely on your community. Like don't go to therapy, don't use medication, don't use anything like that, because like you have a community and that should be your therapy, right? Your pastor is your therapist. Like it was so, and it's like, no, that's not how it works. Like I want to just go blow off some steam and live my life, and that was my really big statement to how I was brought up, because I was like, I just want to like go out and drink a bunch, honestly, and smoke some weed and like have a good time with my friends for like a while, and I wasn't feeling sorry, you know.
I'm curious about like just maybe reflecting back on your childhood. How much of the religious part of your childhood did you take with you, and how much of it did you kind of leave behind?
Such a great question. I think I take with me I want to be an influence for good in the world. I do believe that there is absolute good. I believe there's absolute evil. And I think that like I have a purpose. I believe that, I hope and / believe that there is something after this life one day. I believe that there is maybe a higher power. I don't think it's a God that's like the God of the Bible where he's like intervening in our lives day to day.
It might not be a guy with a white beard in the clouds. But like it is, I think that I'm a spiritual person still, in the sense where like I think that there is something bigger than me. I think I was destined to do something. And I think having a message is very powerful and very important in this life. But about everything else, basically the doctrine and the like dogmas around it of being principles of like, you must be this and it must look this way and be this way is everything
everything that I've left behind. But the purpose is what I've taken with me.
That's interesting.
From religion.
You know, when I talk to my friends about it, right? It's like I'm more spiritual than I am religious, and I think that kind of comes from, that's maybe a little bit of the rebel in me. Yeah. Because when it was, you know, in high school, it was all kind of forced on you, and you didn't have a choice whether you learned about it or not. And so when I left that, I was like, I don't want the structure. I just want the relationship with God. Yeah. And I think like that's what religion should be about. It's about your personal relationship with the higher power or yourself or the people around you or whatever it is for you.
Whatever is improving you and making you a better citizen in the community and a better person in society. Like, I don't really think that there is one way. And I think that's a huge thing that I've rejected, is that I think all religions are valid. You know? If you want to it doesn't matter which one. I think they're all kind of the same at the end of the day. Or none of them. Like, you are autonomous and you have full ability to be able to like choose your own path and go forward as you will, you know? And that is just not something that I think is part of the plan for religion, because they want to oppress you and keep you down and control you so that you must return to them for the answers, for the leaders of the church for the answers. Which,
Isn't that crazy?
It's crazy. Yeah.
So on a little bit of maybe a little bit of a switching topic, but like, you know, so you grew up in Chicago, school in California, but how did you find yourself in Nashville? How did I find myself in Nashville? And talk about the woman that you moved here, or the person you moved here with, excuse me. Absolutely. So I decided to move to Nashville with my best friend. Yeah. His name is Jake, but he is a drag queen. Yeah. So drag queen. I corrected myself. I'm sorry. It's okay. It's okay. They go by both pronouns, you know, like, because if they're in drag, they're she, but if they're not, they're he. So anyways, I moved here with my like high school friend, Jake. We became best friends though, like later in high school / after high school, and COVID was happening, and we lived together at the time. We were like, wow, this is so boring. Yeah, we should do something when everything lightens up a little bit. Like, you know. And so I think we all felt that. Yeah, exactly. So then we all make very drastic decisions, you know. And so we saved all of our, you know, like government stimulus checks. Remember those? Oh God, yeah. Yeah, and we moved to Nashville, and it was like we moved in June of 2021, and he wanted a new start, I wanted a new start. Both of us, it was really just the quest of like, what would be a good place, a young city that has a lot of art and a lot of culture, a lot of like diversity that's really booming right now, that obviously I as a musician could thrive in, but you as a drag queen also could, you know, because it's what you want to pursue. Right, and Nashville's also really accepting. You know, it's a really accepting This city. Is not the South. Like, this is the South, but it's not like the South. I was just going to say, I can't speak for an hour outside of Nashville, but I can speak for the city, because New Orleans is very similar. New Orleans is everybody's welcome, but as soon as you're 20 minutes outside the city, you might not be as welcome. Exactly, like everything goes. Which has always been weird. But it is weird, and I felt the same way. I always say, like, since I'm from Illinois, I've driven through like Southern Illinois. Yeah. That's more of the South than this is. Yeah, than this is for sure. This is not bad, but I think that overall, then we landed on here. We're like, this is going to be really fun. Yeah. You know, we were both 22. Now I'm 25, but we were 22 at the time, and we were like, this is gonna, you know, like new adventure, you know, and that was for sure. Whatever. So we both came here and we both really hit the ground running and in our respective scenes, and I just tried to go to as many open mics as I could and meet as many people as I possibly could. It's a grind. It really is. Yeah. And I think networking is like so important, and so I mean, it's not just how many shows you play or how many reels you can make. Like, it's really about who you know and how are you fostering your relationships in the community, you know? 100%. Especially in Nashville. Yes. Especially, I came here from New York. Finding artists to interview in New York was really easy. I'm finding in Nashville, it's a little bit harder to find the right kind of artist to talk to. I agree. I think that there's such an oversaturation of music here and of art here that sometimes finding the people that really stand out and are like the diamonds in the rough is hard, because like there's so much to sift through constantly. Right. But yeah, no, I really hit the ground running, and then I was basically performing weekly by the fall of 2021. Yeah. And then that's pretty quick. Yeah, it was crazy. Not everyone makes it that quick. No. And I think you said one of the struggles, I think this is from an article from one of the Nashville publications, that you said one of the biggest struggles was finding your band at first. when you first got
and
here?
it's still gonna always be a struggle. Like I have core members of the band, and like my guitarist Zach Keefe. He's been with me since the beginning. He and I actually went to high school together. So he moved eventually too. And he's definitely been a rock in my group and in my ensemble for a long time now, and I really appreciate him. But other than that, like I've gone through several different drummers, and you always feel like you've got a nice...
Drummers are a different breed.
But it's also several different bassists, and like always finding a sub or having having a fifth member in. Like, do I want to get I play the keys, but sometimes it's nice to have another keys player that steps in so I can do more performing, dancing, conductor. Moving around. Exactly. But yeah, I've had sax players before, a second guitarist, so it's always like a rotating group of people, but I try to keep the core members the same, and they have been. I go through stints of having them the same.
That's so special, though, that you know what I mean? You have the same people that are continuing to come back to you. It
is so special, and I feel like it's not prioritized enough in Nashville.
And not everybody has it.
Not everybody does.
I mean, it's a luxury.
It is. I know so many artists that in the community that definitely have to like scramble always to find more of like a freelance player to kind of step in and do the show. And I am always very lucky to be able to be like, hey guys, this is the schedule, this is the thing that we're doing, and they're like, let's go.
What was it like when you first got to, like, I'm not a songwriter, but when I first got here, it was pretty surreal. Like, there was music everywhere, and I'm a music nerd, so it was pretty cool. And as an interviewer, I was kind of getting excited because I was like, okay, there's a lot happening here. But as a songwriter, it might be almost overwhelming because there's so many people that are trying to do exactly what you're trying to do. Did it feel like that?
Yes, but I've always been very type A in the sense where like the challenge has never scared me away, and I'm still not scared. Like it definitely doesn't have like maybe the same allure or rush or like that it once.
Right, like when you were first driving into the city, like when you first see the,
it's electric,
it's something different.
It's totally something different where you're just like, I'm gonna live and first of all, I'm gonna live in a new city by myself, no parents,
and that's
500
weird.
miles away.
That's weird.
Yes.
Yeah.
But then after that, you're like, oh, I'm with my best friend. We're gonna get into some trouble. This is gonna be amazing.
Yeah, and that part's fun.
That part's fun. And then it's like, okay, what am I gonna do with my life? But it's that clean slate. And then when I started going, part of the best part of Nashville is that there's then no shortage of shows to go to. So part of the networking is then supporting other people and going to their events and always showing up for them. And then you start to see who you like, who your friends are, who's cool in the scene, who you're vibing with, who you want to write with, who you just want to hang with and kick
who
back
you want to interview with.
Yeah, who you want to interview with, exactly. But it's so nice, and I think if you are a good person, being a good person is a huge facet of being a good musician in the Nashville music scene. Yeah. Because honestly, I don't know if people want to work with you if you're not nice, No,
I think that's true. In New York, it was different, right? In New York, it was, okay, we're going to work together, we're going to help each other get ahead. We don't have to talk ever again, but if we can help each other, we can get along for a week.
Which...
In Nashville, it's different. In Nashville, it's like, hey, I don't know if I vibe with you, so, maybe we can't work together, which is different. But I kind of like that a little bit. It's a more genuine approach. It is
a more genuine approach. And you still get, since people have moved here, so from across all over the country, I feel like you definitely get a lot of people that are still super fake. Well, we don't hang out with them. We weed them out quickly, I feel like now.
I think you can sniff them out pretty fast. The ones that don't mean it. At least I feel like it's been pretty easy for me to do that.
Fully agree. Yeah. Yes. And I think there are a lot, but...
And that's just music industry, too.
Yes.
No matter where you go.
It's really the arts and entertainment. It's unfortunately a very self-serving, industry and thing, I know
it is.
It's tough because, I always want to be, promoting myself and doing what's best for myself, but, I also want to uplift other people. That's my entire mission in music is to, make women feel great about themselves and make, give a voice, hopefully, to the LGBT and, uplift them and do, work with the religious trauma people that have been through really terrible experiences and make people feel seen, heard, and validated while also having a good fucking time.
It can be helping people can be fun. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be some deep heart to heart every single time. It can be. You know what I mean? It can be a release.
You could just, it's a release. It's just the idea of you put on a show and you say something on stage or you sing a song that night and it really resonates with someone, and that's why we do it,
Yeah.
So it's how do I promote myself the best way that I can while also then helping other people. It's they're so different motives, you know.
It's so cool to see your character come out. Like your mannerisms, your energy embodies your inner character so much.
Thank you so much.
I wrote this down.
Yes, go ahead.
Because this was a caption on one of your Instagram posts.
Oh wow,
really caught my attention.
You were not kidding. You did a deep dive.
So you said that, I guess maybe this was actually part of the interview that you did. You moved to Nashville wanting to be the best songwriter, but then when you got here, you realized that you wanted to be the best frontman.
Yes.
And I think that that's really cool because I think that I think that speaks to, what did I say here? You're obviously a storyteller, but I think that speaks to what part of the storytelling process you embody.
Yes.
You know, you are the bold, you know what I mean, image of what your music tries to represent, whereas I think some people are totally fine being the, you know what I mean, being the you know, in a locomotive, like you know, you gotta shovel coal and make the thing go. I think you're the front of it, but there's a lot of people that gotta shovel coal to make it work.
Right.
I mean, those are the songwriters, right? This is a bad analogy, but I think you're getting it a little bit.
Yeah. No.
You're the image of what it is, and that's so cool. You know what I mean?
But it's also
embody visually what you're trying to do.
You know what sucks for women though is that it's so hard to be like.
What a bad analogy I just gave.
No,
so bad.
No, you're totally fine. It sucks though because like it's so hard. I feel like for a woman to get up there and be like, I absolutely want to be the face. I want to be the leader.
Is that
I want to be the badass that writes the songs and sings them and wears the sparkly outfit. Yeah. Like, but it's like if you're asking me genuinely, what do I want to do? It's that. You know, I want to be that.
Figure that? Like, when did you discover? Like, there had to be something.
So I actually, fun fact about me, I never had performed with a band until I moved here.
Yeah.
So my first band show I think was July 21st, 2021.
Wow, you remember the date too.
Yeah.
And
it
big.
was one of those things where it was like, I am so happy that I'm doing this, but I've never done this before, so how do I turn this into a project?
Right.
Alley Taps, actually, where we are, is then my first
talk about,
residency.
The significance, right?
Yes. So then by the time October then rolled around of that same year, I performed here weekly.
Right.
And that was like a huge momentum builder for me. Lots of local people that hang out here, lots of tourists that hang out here, lots of people that like came to see the Arreis experience, the show.
Right. And
I could just try different things and flesh out my whole thing, you know.
Right.
I always had a costume change.
Yeah.
I always I then sort of, I'm sure you saw on Instagram, then eventually went into like pasties and body paint.
Oh yeah.
So I then just had I have a friend of mine who's like a spectacular artist. Mm-hmm. So before some of my big shows, she would paint my body. Yeah. Like my whole body.
How cool is that?
It's so cool.
Yeah.
And I would reveal into this like body paint pasties thing.
Was that ever too much for people though? Like I think you mentioned maybe like it's sometimes it's a little too much.
And I think then what eventually made me realize that I want to do this was when I actually was able to handle the pushback and just be like, well, I don't care. I love it. They love it. The people that love it, and I am enjoying what I'm doing, and I'm putting on a show in a town where people just want to wear a snapback and play their guitar and sing about beer, you know? I'm putting on a show. This is a burlesque show. This is the Arreis experience, you know?
Yeah.
And I don't think that performing has been prioritized in this town the way that songwriting or music, all this stuff has been. So when I came in and some people loved it, but some people hated it, I don't care.
Yeah.
It's one of those all publicity is good publicity things. And, and the moment that I knew that I was born to be a frontman is I was playing Bus Call, which is one of the it's one of the bigger showcases, full band showcases in town, and it's at Tin Roof on Demumbrian.
Okay.
And
I know Tin Roof.
Yeah, of course. Unfortunately, we've all been there.
Yeah, we've all been.
We've all had our experiences.
I got kicked out of a Tin Roof once.
I almost did.
In Detroit.
I'm going to tell you about it. So I was playing Bus Call, and I did the dress off, and it was super dramatic, and I had pasties, and by the way, the laws is that you are women just have to cover their nipples. That's it.
Yeah.
That's the decency law. You're allowed to wear pasties. Right. I know this because I do it.
Right.
And
you've Googled it.
I've Googled it. We've been there. And so I then went to Tin Roof and did my reveal. It was awesome. They know that I'm going to do that. The people that booked Bus Call, they knew that.
Right.
And the guy, the security guard at Tin Roof, and was put it back on, and everyone in the audience was boo, because that's lame, you know.
Yeah, that is
and also,
super lame.
What is it was May, so it's hot here by May, you know?
Right.
Every girl in the audience is wearing a tube top and short shorts.
Yeah.
What's the difference between me wearing a black skirt and pasties with full body paint and tights and heels? Like, I'm wearing more layers than everybody. Like, that's another thing why I just praise the drag queens. Like, they're wearing more clothes than anybody ever. Like, they are not hurting children. So that's another thing I always have to say, no matter where I go. But
yeah, fair enough.
Anyways, the point is that they were like, you have to put it back on. And if at the moment I listened and I was like, well, I want to finish my set, I'll put my dress back on. So I did, and then he was like all the way on, and he made me like zip it all the way back up.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is gross. Why are you being this gross? Like, are you like, can you really not handle? This is a 4-song set.
Yeah.
Like, you can't handle 4 songs in like a fun outfit. Like, seriously, this is Nashville.
Yeah, that's pretty aggressive.
Yeah, it was super aggressive and like very oppressive, and I just didn't feel right about it. But now, if I were in the same position, they have not had me back, by the way, which is totally fine.
Which is fine, yeah.
Which is fine. But if I were in the same position now, I would have totally told that guy no.
Yeah.
I would have been like, absolutely not.
Yeah.
What law am I breaking? Who am I hurting?
Yeah.
You know, this is a 21 and over event at a bar where every woman in this bar is dressed similarly.
Yeah.
So I don't really understand what I'm doing wrong or who I'm encouraging to be bad, you know?
Yeah.
It's one of those things, but
I feel that.
I knew I was meant to, but the answer to the question is I knew I was meant to be the front man when then it was presented to me that you get to be bold and you get to make statements that not everybody gets to make, and that sometimes people aren't going to like you for it. Yeah. It's even more fun sometimes.
True. Yeah, that can kind of, that can be kind of fun.
I'm not afraid.
That's why. I love that. This is the Instagram caption that I was talking about. I think you said, wow, you must be a front man. And you said, actually, I'm the conductor. And I love that. That was a more... What's the difference between a front man and a conductor?
So that was then, I think then, a new evolution in who I am is that, like, as I've started to develop the show, the set lists have become more consistent. We've had, you know, sometimes we pre-record like intros, like silly intros, and like...
it's a show.
It's a show, right. It's a whole thing, and you want to cue everybody at the right time for dramatic effect, and I think that's been the tightening in the band that I've seen over the past few years. So whenever we play a show now, like, there's a cool festival in Illinois, because I'm from there, that I get to play every year. It's called Homegrown, and it's only indie, all local, all original, and it's this huge thing. So the picture that you saw of the like jump on the stage and all, like, that was from that festival. And I went from this idea of like, oh, I'm the front man, and I am, but if you see me with a full band live, you'll just see a lot of hits, lots of big arms, lots of like talking to people on stage and like, do this, get down, or like we're gonna pause for longer and then like come back in. Like, I cue the whole show.
That's so cool.
And it's such a fun thing. And we played with tracks a few times, but we don't play with tracks. It's all live because I love the idea. I love solos. I love people just breathing their own art into the music.
Each show's a little bit different, right?
Every show's a little different.
Yeah, you don't know what you're gonna get. That's really cool.
Yeah, I don't even know.
Yeah, that's the fun part. I did an interview a couple weeks ago with Cassandra Coleman, and I told her, like, we had to redo the interview because we did it once and there were a bunch of distractions on camera, and I told her the interview's not going to be the same. I'm going to ask not even one of the same questions. I don't know what I ask before I get in here. Like, I have notes, but who knows where these notes are going to take me? Right. You know what I mean?
And that's so
I love that about it. It's the most fun part.
Yes, it's the spontaneity. You want to always keep things fresh because, like, I feel like people respond to that the best way too in an interview. You know,
it's also more fun for me. I'm kind of like, all right, I get a little nervous. Like, okay, where is this going to go? Like, but it's a good nervous. You know what I mean? It's a fun nervous, and we got to talk about songwriting. Yes. Specifically, and you have to tell me if I'm saying this word right. Synesthesia. How do I say it?
Synesthesia.
Synesthesia, okay. So, my God, we're going to cut that out. Okay. Synesthesia. So it's the idea of associating sound with colors, which I've never heard about a songwriter doing this before in music. Really? So this is new to me. So
I feel like I've met so many songwriters that do it or talk about it now, and they're like, I have synesthesia. So having synesthesia is the idea of like associating one sensation with another. Okay. So like, this, you know, for me, it's this sound looks like this color, you know?
Yeah.
So what are these songs? What color do these songs sound like?
Yeah,
you
like
know?
an acid trip.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say,
like,
that's what it sounds like.
You're crazy, yeah.
Right.
This concept was really first introduced to me in college when I was talking to a bunch of other writers that sort of were talking about like what vibes and what ideas like certain songs emit. But I met someone who also had synesthesia, and they were like, it's like for them it's a lot different. For me, it's sort of just like a vibe, a tone, a hue that you see that kind of like permeates the room.
Good word.
When there's a song playing. Yeah. But for other people, it's very specific. Like close their eyes, they see different visuals and paintings and swirls and like based on whatever the song is, you know, and it differently expresses itself in different people.
Right.
But for this, I really wanted to lean into that idea and really heavily structure all the stuff from all my albums then, because I'm an album artist.
Yep, I love.
Yes.
I love
I'm not just
singles are cool, but
singles are cool, right? And like I'm gonna release singles leading up to an album, you know, and I'm just whatever. So exactly. So with the first album it was purple, and the second album with Vices it was red, and then I want to embody whatever red means to me, and so I still do the red.
I was gonna say you're on theme today.
Right, exactly. You're like shades of red, a little bit of pink, a little bit of whatever, but I still like to come and theme myself appropriately, then based on whatever color era I'm in.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's I guess, where did you kind of learn about this? Like, what kind of made you think, okay, I wanna associate maybe the color violet with, you know, with Blindside, and then red with Vices? Like, where did these?
Yes.
You know?
So Blindside to me it's a very young album, and it was the first attempt for me to write a full project, and it's so cute to me when I listen back to it. I'm like, oh, you're so sweet and young, you know. You don't know what you're doing at all, but it's great. Good job.
Right,
you know,
right.
like,
You put it out. Yeah.
You put it out, and you then put one foot in front of the next one, and you did the next thing. You know.
Right.
And it's so important, and it's so important in your journey to just keep going. Like, don't try to over perfect. You just got to keep pushing forward and writing new things, creating new things.
Right.
Eventually, you'll get to the point where you're happy with what you're doing. You know?
Right.
Like whether you're happy with what you're creating. So, Blindside to me was this very like bruised and beaten down like vibe. Very damsel in distress, very like,
interesting that you say bruise, because when I think of bruise, I think of like purple, you know, like a purple bruise on the skin. Yeah.
Sure, exactly, but like bruised, but also pretty, and also like put together still, and very like
and meant to be there.
Preppy, yeah. So I think purple sort of like embodied that whole vibe of like young, 18, 19 era, like me of just quirky and interesting and wanting to be a musician, and purple was always my favorite color from childhood. Still is. And then all these things. So, but then when I went into Vices, it was the first like middle finger to the church, being like, no, I hate this. I want to go the opposite direction. I'm rebelling. I want to drink. I want to smoke. I want to talk about in public about not believing in God. Oh no, you know.
Right.
Stuff like that. And so then I was like, what really embodies this is this like seductive red, like just badass, like ownership of like like anger, but like mute, like the shades that get into like a lot of other things, because like there's different shades of red. Like anger can mean a lot of things. You can suppress it. It can be very muted, or it can be very like fiery and out there and all this stuff.
Okay, I'm curious. When you think of the color maroon or burgundy, what moods come to mind? What tones come to mind?
Just sullenness.
Oh, interesting. That's my favorite color.
Yeah, really?
Yeah, so
okay.
I need to be picked up. I don't consider myself very sullen. I'm like high energy. What do you think? What color is like high energy?
Orange.
Like a yellow or an orange? Yeah.
Like orange.
Like okay.
I like a bright orange. I think that is very high energy. Yellow to me is like a little trippy. I like yellow.
Interesting. Okay.
Yellow is very, like, it's obviously bright, but it's it's like, I don't know, it's almost unnatural.
Okay, yeah, interesting.
Yellow is like, you don't see it very often in like stuff, so yellow seems a little unnatural to me. I don't know.
That's crazy. No, that's cool. I like this kind of stuff. I like getting weird. It's all about
no, it's about getting weird. Exactly.
Okay, so we got to talk about Vices.
I love to talk about Vices.
This is a cool project. So I got a preface for everyone. So it's inspired by Dante's Inferno.
Yes.
There's 9 songs, and if you don't know, I had to look this up because I was familiar with it, but not familiar enough to talk about it.
Yeah.
Dante's Inferno is kind of like the journey to hell, and there's 9 different circles of hell that they have to go through to get there. And so you wrote 9 songs, and those are maybe, correct me if I'm wrong, maybe your 9 journeys, if you will.
So I assume the position of Dante, go through my personal hell.
Yes,
and
exactly.
Exhibit, like, really face all the traumas, face all these hard scenarios, and try to overcome them.
Yeah.
And then write about what I found there, right? Write about what I wrote.
And not only write about it, but also your rollout for this project was so cool because you did a YouTube series called Reconciling Religious Trauma.
Yes.
And you really got into each song. And so I want to do a little bit of a mini series of that.
Mini one. Boom, 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 boom,
Couple
boom,
minutes, 1 or 2 minutes each song.
Yes.
Nocturnal. Big intro, big sounds, largeness, boldness, dramaticness, just like you.
So dramatic. Yes. That has really become like one of my favorite produced songs on the record because it's so huge and such a vibe. Like immediately,
it wakes you up.
Yeah, you're like, all right, is this how we're starting? No way.
The doors are opening of whatever journey we're about to go on.
Yes.
You know,
Nocturnal is about this. I woke up. It's like I snapped out of it. It's like you're out of the daydream. You're out of the brainwashing. You stop drinking the Kool-Aid.
Yeah.
This is what this is about. And now you're thinking about your life and you're thinking about all the stuff you're thinking about, and you go down the spiral and you go down the rabbit hole, and you're like, maybe, like, is this why I'm a bad person? Is this why they're bad people? Maybe I don't care. Maybe I do. Like, it's just all the things that are keeping you up at night, you know?
Yeah.
And that's what that song really is embodied, or is really embodying, is like all this stuff that you never realized, but you left the daydream, and now you're thinking about it all, and you're faced with the realness, your own mortality, your existential crises, all that stuff.
All the Sunday scaries.
Oh, exactly. And then finally you're facing it all night long, and you just can't stop, you know?
Vices, track 2.
Vices is just then, also, Nocturnal is limbo in the Dante's Inferno canon.
Okay.
Vices is lust, number 2.
Got it.
Lust, I feel like, kind of embodies all of the sins, because it's always you want something that you can't have. You're not supposed to do it, but you do it anyway, so you pursue something that is alluring or attractive to you. And it's not just like necessarily sexual. I feel like lust, you can lust after anything. You can want something that you shouldn't have, no matter what, you know?
Yeah.
And I feel like that's sort of all of sin. So vices to me was going to be the circle that sort of encompasses to me the most of the sin, you know?
Right.
Stuff like that. And I think that, like, that really nails it, is that, like, oh, this is so gorgeous and I want it, so I'm going to succumb to it.
Yeah.
I'm just going to let myself do what I want to do because I never have before.
Right.
I've always been so focused on being this, like, goody two-shoes, straight-laced, like, you know, individual that... And now I'm just going to let the vices win, see what happens, you know?
Yeah.
And also, like, taking away then the power of it in a way. Like, it's not a vice, it's just something that we're doing. Like you were saying, like, that's normal, everybody does it. Vices are normal. Vices can be coping mechanisms, not always good ones, sometimes they're bad, but, like, neutralizing that term. Is it, like, really wrong for you to have gone out and done something that you probably shouldn't have? No, it's not. In fact, it might have taught you something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to say, a lot of memories come up just then, a lot of relatable stories.
Exactly, and, like, it's okay. You didn't,
right.
If you're not hurting anybody long term, or you know, or yourself really long term, then who cares? Like, just live a little bit. Vertigo is a very abstract song. So this is actually gluttony, and that was such an interesting, like, how do you write about gluttony? Like,
this one did confuse you. This one kind of, like, this one made me think.
Yes. So Vertigo is actually about the time in my life when I had an eating disorder, and I love to talk about this too, because that was another thing I think that, like, the church really drives home, is just the presentation of how women should look and how you need to, what you need to do, and, like, if you need to be thin, how thin is that? And I just got really caught up in that. And so before I moved to Nashville, I actually had anorexia, and that was something that I don't talk about a ton because I've really recovered now, and it's not necessarily beneficial for me to go out there and be a spokesperson for it, because I still have to mind my own thoughts and mind my own eating habits and make sure that they're good and that I'm healthy and I'm doing what's right for myself and not, you know, overeating, undereating, you know, like all these different things. And so, but that was a huge one for me, is that I think at the time I was so vain. I was so wrapped up in this vanity that even though I was the thinnest I had ever been, it's so gluttonous to have to, like, realize that other people are starving and you're choosing to starve. Like, there are so many of these like dichotomies that
yeah, that's interesting.
That I was like, this is so gluttonous, and this comes from such a place of privilege that I have, you know? And I really need to unlearn this and realize that, like, we need to do better in this country to, like, uplift more people of different sizes and different things, and to not be so judgmental and hard on women. So Vertigo really came from truly the feeling of when I was like in this eating disordered time in my life. Whenever I stood up, I get dizzy, you know?
Yeah.
And so,
did eating ever feel like a vice when you were going through?
I think so. And I think like
that time
also, or like not eating was a vice, like, you know, like the rush of just feeling like of control that you had of like, I feel like I'm better because I ate less, you know, than this person, and like all this comparison, just toxic culture, when like it's something so fundamental that everybody needs to do. It's crazy, you know?
It almost sounds like, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I never suffered from anorexia, but it almost sounded like not eating became almost like a drug almost.
It was. It's crazy. But then also then eating was too, because then if you don't eat for 5 days, then you have to eat a bunch, you know, you're dying. So
either way, you're conflicted, and
you're so conflicted, and it's so tough to like really recover and to, again, get your mind out of that like phase. And it's something that nobody talks about. Like, it's one of those like mental disorders. Like, I feel like in our country, like, we're starting to get a little bit better with like anxiety, depression, the standard ones, you know?
Sure,
but like
the big
eating
ones,
disorders have such a high mortality rate, one of the highest, you know? And we're not being, but yet we're still, you know, selling diet pills and selling like clean juice cleanses and workout videos and this, and now everybody on Instagram is an influencer for fitness and looks perfect and is perfect, but nobody's perfect, you know? And it's one of those things where I got so wrapped up in that when I was like between like the ages of like 20 and 22, that like then when I started playing all the time, it was like, oh well, I have to go out and perform. I can't just go run, you know? I can't just go work out for 3 hours and like all this stuff. So music really saved me, I think, out of that, really snapped me out of it.
That's awesome.
But when I was writing that song, of course, it was this very like sullen, like, I don't even, like almost dazed and confused sort of thing, because when you don't eat for that long too, or like not even don't eat, but like just eat progressively less and less, like you just become very like brain cloudy.
Well, it messes with your, You know, there's an interesting quote that I heard about, it kind of relates to what you were talking about, how if everybody in the world threw their problems into a big hat, you would grab yours and run. And I think that speaks a little bit to what you were just talking about, how like everyone goes through their own thing, you know what I mean? Nobody's perfect, right? And at the end of the day, I don't think you would want other people's problems, because you don't know what other people are going through, you know what I mean? And so that quote always sticks out to me when I feel like, oh, they're doing, you know, they're doing so much better at this or that, and I think, you know what? You've got your own thing going, Michael, and stick to your thing. Right,
exactly. It is so interesting looking back and realizing, like, now that I don't look the same that I did many years ago, and growing through that, and like realizing that I'm not worth any less. I'm still like, I'm still doing it. I'm gonna like, and then it has empowered me and made me more confident to then like get on stage and be like, you can look however you want. Be you, do you, like, and don't let the culture that is like influence what you want to look like or who you want to be or what you want to do with your life. You know? So that's Vertigo. You know?
And don't perform at Tin Roof.
Don't perform at Tin Roof.
Silver lining.
Silver lining. Silver lining is it represents greed and prodigality. So this was like, to me, my opportunity, you know, in the Bible, the prodigal son story, to write my own prodigal daughter story. And to be able to like tell, it's a loose thing that happened to me a little bit, but not like, it's exaggerated, but it was like, if I met this guy and I was really into him for a little while, and he had a cocaine problem, and then I was like, okay, what if I go down this, you know, path and date him and all these things? And so it was sort of the like telling of what I think would have happened to me with the addictive personality I sort of had at the time.
Yeah.
If I would have pursued that relationship, but never did, you know?
Yeah, that was a deep one. One of my favorites, 5 More Minutes.
5 More Minutes, the bop, the star, you know?
This is one of my favorites. It got the energy up.
Exactly, the flashy, because it's sort of like the first 2 songs come in really hard. The Vertigo and Silver Lining are ballads or softer or minimal, you know? But then 5 More Minutes then revs you back up.
You can almost feel the suffering a little bit in Vertigo and Silver Lining, and then you can feel the healing in 5 More Minutes.
Exactly. 5 More Minutes has really turned into, I was having a conversation with my ex-boyfriend, and I don't know if we were breaking up, or I don't know if I wanted to stay, or if he wanted me to go, or he wanted me to stay and I wanted to go, but it was one of those silly conversations that you have with a boyfriend one night, and you're like, oh, like, can I just stay for a little bit longer? Like, I don't want to leave yet. Like, it's cold. Like, it's whatever. Yeah. And then he or I said, like, well, you said that an hour ago. Right. You said 5 more minutes an hour ago. And I went, okay, I'm going to leave now. I have a song to write, you know? Yeah. Like, it's fine.
I have the idea, right.
And so I thought to myself, I was like, well, what does 5 more minutes actually mean? Like, does that actually give you more time, you know? Or are you just wanting something that you know isn't going to be forever, you know?
Oh, what an interesting theory. That's crazy.
So I knew I was never going to stay with this guy. So I wrote this song, I actually think, pretty much, like, we still dated for like a while after this. Yeah. But I wrote this song just being like, I know I'm not going to be with you forever, though. Yeah. Like, and do I, like, should I break up with you now and be, like, heartbroken, but then, like, pursue my career and, like, go, because he didn't want me to play music. Like, this was a whole thing.
Oh, wow, yeah.
And then,
that's not going to work.
Or do I, like, give myself 5 more minutes with you, procrastinate, and then feel a little bit better in the moment, because we're like, I'm obviously not heartbroken, but prolong the suffering, you know? Right. And prolong the time that I don't get to pursue doing what I love. So this is definitely the, like, females, get up, you know, like, 5 more minutes, like, you're gonna rule the world, but you gotta go get it. You gotta go get it, and it's now, and it really is now or never. Yeah. And it's never gonna be, like, what you think, you know, it is if you stay. Yeah. You know?
I love that. Best, worst, love.
All right. So this is definitely, like, this is about my best friend that I moved with. Yeah. This is my dedication to the whole gay community of, like, this is the circle of hell that is heresy. Yeah. And so heresy is obviously a relationship that's not approved of. Or, you know, you're a heretic in the church if you're going against what the you know, the standard, the status quo. So this is really just about me and my best friend, that no matter what relationships that I've encountered in life, this is my family, this is my person, that I would make bad decisions for this person. And it really embodies this idea in vices that people can be vices, not just things, not just drinking, not just smoking, not just whatever.
That's
you know,
an interesting idea. I've never thought about vices like that. I think but that's important though, because like that can be, you know, like you can go back to a relationship that's, you know what I mean, not good for you, that you know
that you should
keep
not
returning
be
to.
in.
Yeah,
exactly. People could absolutely be vices, but he is my best vice.
Right. In this case, it's a good thing. Right.
He's my best vice, the best. And also the worst, because I would completely jump off a cliff for him. You know, it's like one of those things. Sweater.
Yeah, sweater. That's why I wore this big sweater today.
Yes.
Sweater's my favorite song on the project.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, so tell me why first. I need to know. Why is sweater? What stands out about it? Why is that your favorite?
It's kind of you described it as the club bop.
It is
which is kind of I like the high energy stuff. I tend to lean towards that. But sweater's kind of like the be yourself song on the record, I feel like a little bit.
Yes, that's
like,
the sexy
wear
bop,
the clothes you want to wear, you know, fucking be yourself.
Yeah.
You know, whatever that means, you know, whether it's being sexy or whatever it is, like that's the be yourself record.
Totally.
That's why it's my favorite.
Okay, I love that. So sweater is actually the violence circle of hell. And it's not about being violent, but for me, it's about how women sometimes, like the flip side, like not every woman is fantastic, amazing all the time. They can also be manipulative. And this was really reflecting on my own lifetimes that I've like used sex as like a means of trying to get people to stay or like get people to like, you know, like not want to fight, you know, stuff like that, not want to confront real problems. And that's what sweater is about. It's this like seductive dance to avoid the real problem at hand. It's like, well, if you just stay, this is what you're in for, you know? Like trying to like get this person to stay. Even though it's not good, we shouldn't be doing that. We should talk, we should, you know, be adults and do the healthy thing. Yeah. But like I'm not obviously interested in that.
Why call it sweater?
Because sweater is so unassuming.
Yeah.
Sweater is so like cozy, comfy. Like,
Yep.
You would.
It's true.
But it's like then juxtaposed with the like rip off my sweater, you know, and like take it off, like, you know, all bets are off. Like, let's just go at it. It's definitely the like. It's not about like. I always say it because my dad, it's so funny, my dad actually comes to my shows, and he's like really cool dude now, you know, he's like really turned in, like, been like chilled out a little bit on the like religious side, I feel like, of things. Yeah. And, or at least with me, and he just has always encouraged me to think for myself and be independent. And so when he actually loves Sweater too. Yeah. But he was always like, and I realized it's the only song on Vices that you swear in. And
yeah,
I was
it is
like,
the only one with the E.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, I was like, well, I only use swear words if I feel like I can't find a better word. I'm like, and we're not talking about having sex, we're talking about fucking in the song. You know, like, it's totally about. And so I just like cut to me telling my dad, well, I had to use the F word because I'm not talking about sweet lovemaking. And he's just like, all right, you're my daughter, get away from me.
This is different, right?
Like, stop talking. It's so funny because at all my shows, whenever I do the costume change, he always like turns around and but like still is cheering. But like it's like
he's supportive, but yeah.
He's like, I want to see it, but like
that's great. Go Dad. No, that's what it is. I love that.
It's so funny.
The literal maybe song, or the most literal song, Go to Hell, Straight to Hell.
Straight to Hell, yes. Yeah. Very literal. That one is just fun. Yeah. You know, that was just fun. That's about fraud. So
maybe rock inspired a little bit.
Definitely rock inspired. Yeah. Huge shout out to my guitarist Zach on that one because he wrote the riff, and the riff has been iconic.
The way it opens up is dope.
Exactly.
Yeah, I remember it was like Pink Floyd almost, or something like that.
Exactly.
The first.
It's very rock and roll, very like indie or alternative, almost like Muse or the Arctic Monkeys almost. I feel like
Arctic Monkeys for sure.
Have like some of that inspiration in there. Right. And so what I love about Straight to Hell though is the like complexity of the story. Like I'm definitely telling a story. Right. And it's a cheating story. So there's this guy super into me, but he's like cheating on his girlfriend. And I'm just like letting it happen, which is obviously wrong. Right. But like it's the fraud, it's that circle of hell. And this was everything that I write about is very personal and very real. So like all this stuff happened, you know? Right. And it's so crazy. So that was a very interesting situation that I faced in my life. And
it's so honest, but it's, you know what I mean? You're getting off your chest. Like that's, you know, maybe it's a little bit of reconciliation for yourself. Like, hey, this happened, and you know, I'm not perfect either.
Exactly, and I think like that is something that again the church just missed. Like no one can admit their faults. No one can admit when they were wrong, and like maybe or they were wrong about their doctrine or their teachings or what they did in their life, and they weren't being honest about when they messed up. And it's like I messed up plenty of times along the way, you know. And
I mean, same. I think we all have. Yeah. You know.
So I think like this was about talking about my vices and how they're not that bad, and then the things that are bad and you shouldn't do because they were bad, you know? Right. Like, anyways.
To kind of cap off the album.
Yes.
Quiet Love. Maybe the resonance a little bit, you know what I mean? Like bringing it all together in more of a little bit of a slower way.
Yes. Quiet Love is so important to me because it was like my last. There was another song that was actually supposed to be that on that slot at 9, and I had written it with someone that I went to the Christian college with. Yeah. And we had talked about it being the last song, and eventually she said to me, like, I don't think you should use that song because we had co-written it. Yeah. She had written more though, and I respected that. But so I was asking her for permission, basically, and she did not want me to use the song on the record, but not because of any like real reason or logistical reason. It was or she wanted to use the song. It was because she didn't agree with my lifestyle and didn't agree with the album and the message of the album and anything like that, and basically told me that like one day I'm going to be held accountable before God for writing this album, and I'm going to go to hell, you know? Like is essentially what she's saying. Like I'm not in God's graces, and if she were to be a part of this album, she would also not be in God's graces, and she would then be held accountable one day for it. And I was like, but isn't God's grace so much bigger than that? Right. Like, what are we really trying to do? I'm releasing this album in good conscience, you know? Right. And she was like, I'm not going to let you do it. So then I very angrily wrote Quiet Love, which was so interesting.
But it doesn't seem angry.
No, because it has to be it has to be graceful, and it has to let go of the problem at the end of the day. You have to grow from it and be done at some point.
It does seem like you're at peace.
Yes.
At the end of that.
Because I decided at that moment, once I finished it, this was the end for Vices.
Yep.
And this is always how it was supposed to end.
Yeah.
And it's me saying, I don't want this religion. I don't want anything that has to do with it unless I get to be myself.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, you know? And
I love that.
It's me coming to peace with with God, or if there is no God, the no God.
Right.
And just being like, whatever happens, happens, but I'm going to be myself. And this was such a journey.
Yeah.
But if I can't let this go, I need God to let me go.
Yeah.
You know?
I love that. To end it on kind of maybe a similar note, what did you learn about yourself when you were writing this album and putting it out?
What I learned is that I'm not actually as angry as I thought I was, you know?
I love that.
I think that, like, people hurt me, but I don't think that if you know, and so I'm not angry at something that might not exist anymore. You know, I'm just like, you know what? People are messed up, and sometimes people mess you up. You know.
Yeah.
And
you know, I'm lucky to have a good therapist, and one of the things that we talked about really early on when I was going through it is that, you know, like I'm not perfect, right? I've got things going on, I've got struggles, I've got problems, and whether I gave those problems to myself or not, whether I'm the root cause of those problems or my parents or my friends or whoever, it doesn't matter, right? They're mine now, and I have to own them, so I might as well get used to, you know what I mean? Get used to dealing with them and find contentness, not necessarily happiness every day, but find contentness in what I'm doing.
That's such a powerful thing. I love that, because there's ownership, there's responsibility.
Exactly. It's like, it doesn't matter who gave it to me, it's mine. You know?
Right. It's responsibility for your problems. And when I wrote it, I was like, well, when I finished writing it, and it was so cathartic, I just finally realized, like, I can't put my problems on other people or like anything anymore. Like, I can't be full of rage and full of blame anymore, you know? So I just said, okay, this is what I'm going to decide on for now. I'm always allowed to change my mind. I'm always allowed to make a different choice one day. But for now, then I want to be done. I want to have peace. I want to have rest, you know? And that's the thing that the Bible promised me, was peace that passes all understanding, was just the contentment and, you know, just love. And I wanted to feel that finally, you know?
Did you feel it?
I think I did. I feel like, but it wasn't through the church. It was through people, conversations. Bringing awareness through people that then love me for who I was, and finding that, you know? And letting go and shedding the dead weight of people that didn't care about me for who I was, you know? So I think I did, and that's the most beautiful part about all of this, is that we grow. We did better this time around, you know? And that's Vices for you. That's it. That's the best. That's really Arreis for you. That's the place to end it. Arreis, thank you for joining. This was incredible. Yes, thank you. A cool oh my goodness, I know. I'm so glad we got to make this happen. You gotta come to a show. Everybody has to come to a show. Yes, I absolutely will. I know you texted me a little while ago to come to the last one. I couldn't make it, but the next one I'm coming to. Oh my gosh, no. The next one's gonna be. I'm gonna invite everyone to the next big full band show. That one's gonna be really fun. We have to get out there for that. But this was so cool. Thank you for joining us. Thank you so much. This was awesome.